It started on a Friday evening. I had parked my old Airstream trailer by the lake, as I'd done for years. The spot wasn't just any place, it was where my late wife and I used to sit and watch the sunset. I lit a small campfire, grilled a steak, and let the soft hum of crickets fill the air. But peace doesn't last long when an hoe decides it runs the county. Around 9 p.m., a white SUV with flashing hazard lights came rolling down the dirt road. Out stepped a woman in her 50s, clipboard in hand, wearing the official hoe windbreaker. Her name was Carol Higgins, president of the Cedar Valley Homeowners Association. Behind her were two board members, phones out and filming like they were about to catch a criminal. "Sir," she began sharply, "you can't camp here. This lake is part of the Cedar Valley shared amenities. It's for Ho residents only." I looked up from my chair. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "this entire property, including this lake, belongs to me. Always has." Carol scoffed. "That's not what our map says. This area is protected Ho land. You're trespassing. You'll need to leave immediately, or we'll have to call the sheriff's department." That last part almost made me laugh. I leaned forward and smiled. "You do that," I said. "Call them." An hour later, as I was sipping coffee by the fire, the sound of distant sirens broke the stillness. Two patrol units rolled up the dirt road, lights flashing blue and red against the lake water. Carol stood proudly beside them, arms folded, like she'd just delivered justice. The deputies stepped out, recognizing me instantly, but they were careful to stay professional. "Evening, Sheriff," Deputy Mike said, trying to hide his smirk. "We got a call about a trespasser." Carol looked confused. "Wait, what? You know him?" "Yes, ma'am," Mike said. "That's Sheriff Grant Westona, our boss." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Carol's clipboard fell to her side, her expression frozen between shock and embarrassment. I stood up, brushing dust from my jeans. "Now that we've cleared that up," I said, "let's talk about why you're calling law enforcement on a man sitting by his own lake." Carol tried to regain her composure. "This land is part of our Ho jurisdiction. We maintain the roads, signs, and water access. It's our responsibility to keep non-members out." "Your map's wrong," I replied. "This lake and the surrounding 120 acres were excluded from Ho control when the development was built. I should know. I signed the final boundary approval myself when you folks submitted it to the county 10 years ago." Her jaw dropped. She didn't know that the trespasser she tried to evict was also the man who signed the paperwork that limited her Ho's reach. Mike handed me a folder from his cruiser. "Got the property files you asked for, Sheriff, deed, plat map, and all." I opened the documents and spread them out on the tailgate of my truck under a flashlight. "Here's your boundary line, Carol," I said, tracing it with my finger. "The Ho ends right here, half a mile east of this lake. Everything west, including where you're standing, is my ranch. Always has been." She looked like she wanted to sink into the ground. "Boot to broken bar. Our records of broken bar are outdated," I interrupted. "And if you'd called the county instead of trying to bully a property owner, you'd have known that." The deputies left soon after, and Carol slinked away with her entourage. But I knew it wasn't over. Rarely back down if they doubled down. The next morning, I woke up to find a new sign hammered into the dirt road: "Private Ho property and no trespassing, a violator's will." That was the last straw. I wasn't just a rancher, they'd called out the wrong man. I drove into town, filed a formal harassment complaint, and had my legal team send the Ho a cease and desist order. By Monday, the county zoning board had reviewed everything and confirmed what I'd said: the Ho had no authority beyond its designated boundary. But I wasn't finished. To make sure they never tried this stunt again, I scheduled a county review hearing. When the Ho board showed up, they were met by a full room of property owners, many of whom had their own complaints about Ho overreach. I stood up at the podium, not as the sheriff this time, but as a landowner. "For too long," I said, "this Ho has acted like a private government, using intimidation and misinformation to control land they don't own." That ends today. The room erupted in applause. Carol tried to argue, waving papers and muttering about shared resources, but the county attorney quickly shut her down. The official ruling declared my property sovereign from Ho control, and any further interference would result in criminal charges for harassment and unlawful restriction of access. 2 weeks later, I returned to the lake. The illegal signs were gone. The board had issued a written apology, though I knew it came from fear, not remorse. Still, I took it as a victory, and not just for me, but for every homeowner tired of being pushed around by people with clipboards and power trips. As I sat by the fire again, fishing rod in hand, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. The same people who'd called the cops to remove me from my own land had no idea that I was the law in Cedar Valley. It wasn't about ego, it was about principle. Are meant to maintain communities, not rule them. And as long as I wore the badge of county sheriff, I'd make sure no one in Cedar Valley forgot that. The lake shimmered under the twilight sky, calm and untouched, just as it had always been. The only sound was the splash of a fish breaking the surface and the crackle of the fire. For the first time in weeks, I felt peace again, earned, defended, and rightfully mine. A month later, word spread about what had happened. Property owners across the county started questioning their. Some found illegal restrictions buried in their bylaws. Others realized they'd been paying fees for services that didn't exist. My confrontation had lit a fire that couldn't be put out. When a local news reporter asked for an interview, I kept it simple. I wasn't looking for a fight, I said. I just wanted to camp by my lake. But if standing up for my rights reminds others they have the same power, then it was worth every second. And so the story of the sheriff who trespassed on his own land became a legend around Cedar Valley. Some folks laughed, some cheered, and even the Ho board learned to stay in its lane. The lake still glows golden at sunset, and every time I camp there, I remember that peace isn't given, it's defended. Sometimes, you just have to remind people who truly owns the